Forgive me if I'm taking the wrong point from the article. Okay, I think this is a point. Yeah. Now you got it now. I think what we would say. They're doing something. They're doing. There's a movement in Japan to do something that we often say something in these videos about the way in which people are like. I mean, it's something we could do here. Is that not what? Is it about world? Is it what? I'm trying to think. What you directed me to this? Is it because of the kind of things we like to see here, or is it because of World War II, or what? Where you what angle? What would you like us to take from this? You take it a bunch of ways. I mean, okay. I mean, part of the two things. I'll say what we know about here, okay, and then the meaning of the article. What one should take for it, I'm not sure. This is what I was thinking, okay. We see a lot of people say that that in a free country there's certain things you would learn in your education to be part of education to know it's like part of the history of the country really, but it's sort of banned and also like the long history of a lot of what was in textbooks that got carried over was essentially corporate propaganda. And that's like openly known that a lot of the stuff that ended up in textbooks is like how, the way about a bunch of things is like essentially corporate propaganda for a long time, but it never was. Then it just stayed in the textbooks. But also things people aren't taught in universities, ways in which things are left out that any free society would be part of a basic education. The foundations of our society for real, the history of different things for real. That are like just absent from any level of education. Okay, what's interesting is they say that as though like it's very pessimistic. The reality is that here's something that's going on in Japan, without even knowing much about the history of Japan. There's an advocates for what this sort of like. There's a lot of sort of like patriot and like nationalist advocates within the school boards and stuff. And in this case, apparently, so we're learning this is taking place in another country. But you think about what it means for us. Okay, one because that a junior high school and high school textbooks need to give a balanced account of what are actually disputed historical events. Very often, students in universities in here are taught things and not told that it's in dispute and that there's no agreement on that. Okay, second of all, they say that the social studies textbooks. Oh, they're cleaning out. They want to get out certain social studies textbooks that essentially have what they're describing as sort of from their sort of like right wing information that's not actually it got they're looking over all the textbooks and seeing how they can be things to be updated so there'll be people will be educated in a more balanced way. Whether or not these changes in Japan. I'd have to be from Japan to tell you if this is the right kind of changes, but that's not the point. That's something that's never discussed here. We have textbooks that still have things that came out of corporate propaganda. There's entire parts of our history that at one time we could understand why you wouldn't want people knowing, but now we could do things that are banned from university, much of which we say here, that are like not made, people are made aware of the origins of our society, the structure of it, and its history. And it's just not in any textbooks. But the idea that we could, there could be movements to essentially political to change to add to textbooks things that are either outdated, misinformation, things that should be included in a college education. These kind of things, there's no reason that that people have to come out of school with a kind of imposed ignorance. And then when trying to explain something to them, it's called like I don't know, all kinds of names. But also, what this brings to mind is what we were saying that hasn't really happened yet. And there's a discussion in another article here about something going on in terms of discussions that are being had by meetings being held by Jewish students to talk about certain types of issues how things are presented at their college. One of the things that hasn't happened yet, which is that in some of these books your friend read, that like once again a book that like is seen carrying it as something that you're getting in trouble with school. But what it is that people believed that in the 21st century that, and it's by the way, this has happened in Germany. It hasn't happened here. The people by the 21st century, people would have enough distance from World War II to actually teach people the history of World War II. At this time in this country, people are unaware of the history of World War II when they're educated in the high schools, because it's based on the way in which it was presented at a time when we won the war, and there had been the sort of the Holocaust had happened. It's understandable that the view would have been sort of not really a balanced picture at such a time would have been you couldn't picture it. But 3 generations out, we would have more distance from World War II, that the actual history of World War II would be taught without offending anyone because we have enough distance. That hasn't happened yet. The picture students are given of World War II is an absolute fairy tale at this point, because it was written at a time right after the war. Okay, like for example, we often say here that even Robert McNamara, the former Secretary of Defense during Vietnam, he was actually involved in during World War II in a sort of technocratic aspect. He said at the time it was fully known if we'd lost the war, we would have the entire American leadership would have been prosecuted as war criminals. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are just unaware of what was taking place during World War II, understandably after the war. But that's something that has to be revisited, partly because any attempt to mention it, it's one way your friend got in trouble, and quite frankly, I'm still not okay with the fact that I live in a country where I could get in the kind of trouble I did with the Star of David on my arm, which is that I was talking, balanced history of World War II is called anti-Semitic. You're accused of being a Nazi even if you have a Star of David. That's got to stop. It's interesting, a country like Japan's more enlightened. They're changing their textbooks, and Japan, certainly they're looking into, when they say disputed events, they may mean World War II. We've talked often about the idea that what happened was that America was attacked out of nowhere by Japan. The reality is, when attacked out of nowhere, they were aware. It's just an example. The Japanese were aware that bombers were coming off the assembly line in America, specifically with the idea that we might want to attack Japan. They were aware of that. Also, they didn't attack America, the homeland. That's not what happened. They attacked 2 U.S. colonies, which have been taken from their inhabitants by quite violent means. So a bunch of ways in which we don't live in reality about World War II. It wouldn't hurt to include the bombing of Dresden and different kinds of things, and then all the different genocidal things that happened. The fact that, like, the Holocaust takes up the primary thing of what happened, the genocide that happened, unmentioned that we actually burned to death like a population of people in another country. Would you rather be burned to death or gassed? I don't know. But that hasn't happened yet, and this is a sign that other societies are starting to do it. We should too.